It doesn't begin with chaos, it begins with a quiet shift, a silence that seeps into the room, a glance that suddenly feels colder. A few days ago, they looked at you like you were everything they'd ever wanted. Their voice was soft, their eyes warm, their touch tender. And then, almost overnight, something changes. The warmth disappears, the words stop flowing, you feel the distance growing, but you can't explain why, so you try harder. You smile more, apologize more, make yourself smaller, just to keep their love alive. But the truth is, their love was never real. It was control wearing a mask. A narcissist doesn't fall out of love, they deconstruct the person who loves them. Before they ever leave, they start to dismantle you piece by piece. They make you doubt your memory, your perception, your worth. You begin to believe that if you could just be a little more perfect, a little more patient, they'd come back to who they were before. But that person never existed. You start walking on eggshells. Every breath feels like a test. You feel yourself disappearing, losing the sound of your own voice. They've already begun leaving you, not physically but emotionally, spiritually, piece by piece. And when they finally walk away, there won't be much left to take, because they've already taken everything that made you feel alive. This is how it begins. Not with shouting, but with silence. Not with a storm, but with frost. Love doesn't die loudly in a narcissistic relationship, it freezes, quietly, until you're too numb to notice it's gone. Stage 1. The subtle shift from worship to contempt. At first, it feels like magic. They worship you, every word you say feels profound, every flaw you have is called beautiful, and every wound in your heart seems to heal under their gaze. They mirror you so perfectly that you begin to believe you've found your other half, someone who sees your soul, understands your silence, and promises they will never leave. But the truth is, what you mistook for connection was calculation. A narcissist studies you like a blueprint. They learn your fears, your insecurities, your deepest needs, not to love you better, but to control you completely. They build their affection around your pain, make you trust them with your scars, and then later, they'll use those same scars to hurt you. The shift begins quietly. One day, their compliments sound less genuine. Their laughter doesn't reach their eyes anymore. They start teasing you in ways that sting, saying things like, "You're too sensitive," or "You always overthink." They begin correcting how you speak, how you dress, how you react. It feels subtle at first, just small remarks, little corrections. But what they're really doing is rewriting your identity, reshaping you into something they can control. You notice they no longer listen like they used to. They interrupt, dismiss, or roll their eyes when you speak. The conversations that once felt intimate now feel like interrogations. They test how much disrespect you'll tolerate, how much of yourself you're willing to sacrifice to keep their approval, and every time you let it slide, they push a little further. Their words start cutting deeper, jokes become insults, eye contact becomes a weapon. They compare you to others. She's more patient, he's more supportive. They make you feel like you're failing at something you didn't even know you were being graded on. It's not random cruelty, it's systematic conditioning. They are teaching you that love is earned through obedience. The person who once lifted you up now begins to press you down, slowly, strategically, until you no longer stand tall beside them, and you start believing maybe you deserve it, because they were once so kind, so loving, so different. You think the problem must be you. That's the cruel genius of the narcissist. They destroy you in such a way that you think you're destroying yourself. By this point, you're walking on eggshells. You filter every word, every movement, every facial expression, terrified of triggering their coldness or anger. You're addicted to their approval, waiting for tiny crumbs of warmth to fall from the same hand that hurts you. This is the beginning of the devaluation stage, the slow death of your self-worth. And yet, you still chase their affection. Because deep down, you remember how good it felt at the beginning. You remember the person who made you believe in love, and you keep hoping that version of them will come back. But they won't, because that version never existed. It was a mask, a performance, designed to make you dependent on the one person who would eventually destroy you. That's the cruel paradox of being loved by a narcissist. They teach you the highest version of love so they can break you with its absence. They build you up just to watch you fall, and as you crumble they stand above you, not with pity, but with quiet satisfaction. Because in their world, your pain is proof of their power. Stage 2. The gaslight zone. Doubting your own reality. It doesn't happen in one big moment. It creeps in slowly, like fog seeping under a locked door. At first, it's just a misunderstanding. You remember them saying something cruel, but when you bring it up, they deny it. Their voice is calm, almost gentle, as they tilt their head and say, "I never said that. You must have misunderstood me." You hesitate. Maybe you did. You start replaying the moment in your head, trying to convince yourself you imagined it wrong. And that's how it begins, not with lies you recognize, but with confusion you can't explain. Gaslighting isn't about making you believe their truth. It's about making you stop believing in yours. They twist details, rewrite conversations, change timelines. They make you feel guilty for noticing what's wrong. You're too sensitive, you're overreacting, you always create problems. The calm tone in their voice makes it worse because it makes you feel like the unstable one. Slowly, you begin to accept that maybe the issue really is you. You start questioning everything. What you heard, what you saw, what you felt. They call it love, but what it really is mental warfare disguised as intimacy. They make you apologize for things they did, comfort them after they've hurt you, explain yourself for emotions they caused. You start doubting not just your memory, but your intuition. Every time you try to trust your gut, they twist it into guilt. They condition you to seek their approval before you can believe your own eyes. And that's when the silence begins. You stop confronting them because it always ends the same way. They deny, deflect, or make you feel crazy. You stop expressing your needs because they always use them as ammunition later. You stop sharing your dreams because they belittle them. Your fears because they weaponize them. You become quiet, cautious, and constantly exhausted, walking through life as if every step might set off an invisible trap. Gaslighting is not just manipulation, it's erasure. It erases your sense of reality, your boundaries, your identity. You begin to shape yourself around their moods. You learn to read their tone, their body language, the way their keys hit the table. You become an expert in survival, always adjusting, always anticipating. You call it love, but it feels like walking on glass. Fragile, sharp, silent. Then comes the worst part. You start thanking them. You tell yourself, at least they're still here. You apologize for being difficult. You feel grateful they put up with you. The abuser becomes the savior in your mind, and you don't even notice when the cage closes around you. That's when the gaslighting has done its job, when you no longer trust your memories, your instincts, or your truth. By now, you've stopped living with them. You're living through them. Your emotions revolve around keeping the peace, guessing their moods, adjusting your tone, predicting what version of them will walk through the door. You no longer know where they end and you begin. You are a shadow, an echo of the person you once were. And the cruelest part? They prefer you this way because now you are safe, predictable, easy to control. You don't argue, you don't resist, you don't think for yourself anymore. You've become an extension of their ego, a mirror that reflects only what they want to see. Gaslighting doesn't just make you doubt reality, it replaces it. Until one day you wake up and realize the scariest part isn't that they lied to you. It's that somewhere along the way you started believing them. Stage 3. The emotional drain, walking on eggshells. By now, you've stopped trying to be understood. You just want peace, or at least the illusion of it. Every word you say feels like a potential trigger. Every silence feels like a trap. You wake up measuring your breath, watching their face, scanning for danger in the smallest expression. This is what life becomes when you love a narcissist. A constant state of emotional vigilance. You no longer speak freely, you calculate, you edit yourself in real time, trying to stay 2 steps ahead of their anger. If you laugh too loud, they glare. If you're too quiet, they accuse you of sulking. You start apologizing before anything even happens, whispering, "I'm sorry," like it's a prayer that might keep you safe. It's not love anymore. It's damage control. They've trained you to walk on eggshells, but those eggshells are your soul, cracked and fragile. You learn to anticipate their moods like a weather forecaster reading storms. You can tell from the way they shut a door, the pause in their voice, or the way they sigh whether today will be safe or dangerous. And yet, no matter how perfectly you tiptoe, the explosion still comes, because their anger was never about what you did, it was about the power they get from watching you flinch. You begin to feel a constant heaviness in your chest, that quiet panic of never being enough. You stop dreaming. You stop laughing for real. You stop looking people in the eye because shame lives there now. You start to believe the lies they've repeated so many times, that you're too emotional, too needy, too broken. You forget that once you were someone strong, someone bright, someone who didn't apologize for existing. And when you do try to fight back, even gently, they twist it. See how cruel you are? You make everything about you. They paint your self-defense as an attack, your pain as manipulation, your exhaustion as betrayal. So, you stop fighting. You surrender your truth for temporary calm. You call it compromise, but it's really surrender. This is what emotional exhaustion feels like. A slow collapse that doesn't make noise. You still wake up, go to work, smile for people, but inside you're fading. You don't even remember what happiness feels like anymore. The body survives, but the spirit starts dying. And then comes the cruelest part. You start blaming yourself for how dead you feel. You tell yourself, maybe I'm the problem. Maybe I'm too sensitive. Maybe I deserve this. That's the final trick of the narcissist, convincing you that the abuse is your fault, that their chaos is a reflection of your failure to love them right. You've been drained, emotionally, mentally, spiritually. Every day you give a little more of yourself just to keep the peace, until there's almost nothing left. And the most tragic part? Even in that emptiness, you still reach for them, hoping that maybe, if you can just love them hard enough, they'll stop hurting you. But they won't, because your suffering isn't a problem to them, it's proof that they still have control. And as long as you're breaking, they feel whole. Stage 4. The discard, when the mask falls. You never see it coming. One day they're telling you they love you, the next day you're staring at a message that says, "I think we should end this." No explanation, no closure, just silence. The kind that echoes louder than any scream. The person who once begged for your attention now acts as if you never existed. It's like watching a stranger walk away wearing the face of someone you used to know. This is the discard phase, and it feels like death, but it's not yours. It's the death of the illusion. For months, maybe years, you believed in the story they sold you, the soul connection, the forever promise, the shared dream. But none of it was real. It was a performance. And now that the play is over, they're done pretending. They leave fast, as if they've rehearsed it. One day they're holding your hand, the next they're holding someone else's. The timing is never random. They don't let go until they've already found a new supply, someone new to mirror, to feed on, to adore them the way you once did. They move on effortlessly, posting pictures, smiling wide, spinning a new narrative. "You were toxic, I'm finally happy," and the world believes them because narcissists are masters of image. They need to make sure everyone knows it wasn't their fault. You were the problem. You were the reason everything broke. Meanwhile, you're left standing in the wreckage, replaying every word, every memory, every lie, trying to figure out what went wrong. You beg for answers, but they give you nothing. Or worse, they give you cruelty, coldness, mocking laughter. "You're crazy," they say. "You need help." It's not enough for them to leave, they need to erase you. And in those moments, you see their real face for the first time. Gone is the charm, the warmth, the illusion of empathy. What's left is a chilling emptiness. The mask finally gone. They look at you without remorse, without humanity, without the slightest flicker of regret. Because they never loved you in the way you understood love. They only loved the control. The discard isn't random cruelty, it's strategic annihilation. They want to leave you shattered enough that you'll never recover, so that even after they're gone, their voice still lives inside your head. They walk away looking like the victim, while you look like the unstable one. That's the final twist of the knife. You lose them, and then you lose your reputation, too. But the truth is, their leaving doesn't destroy you, it exposes them. Because in that silence, you finally see the truth that was hiding beneath the charm. They never wanted love, they wanted worship. They never wanted connection, they wanted control. And when you stopped feeding that, you became disposable. It hurts because you were real, they weren't. You loved deeply, honestly, fearlessly, and they couldn't handle it. So they left not because you were too much, but because you saw too much. You saw behind the mask. And that's something a narcissist cannot forgive. They discard you to protect their illusion, but in doing so, they reveal everything they tried to hide. And though it breaks you at first, that's also the beginning of your awakening. The moment you realize you were never unworthy, you were simply too real for someone who lives off lies. Stage 5. The Hoover. When they come back for one last feed. It always happens when you least expect it. When your wounds have just begun to close. When silence has started to feel like peace. Then, out of nowhere, they return. A message, short and harmless. "Hey, how have you been?" It's simple, familiar, almost innocent. But your heart knows better. Because behind that small sentence lies an entire strategy. The start of another cycle. This is the Hoover, named after the vacuum cleaner, because they come back to suck you back in, not out of love, not out of regret, but out of hunger. A narcissist doesn't miss you, they miss the supply, the attention, the validation, the emotional energy that only you could give. When their new source runs dry, when admiration fades and their mask begins to crack, they remember the one person who once gave endlessly. You. At first it feels different. They sound softer, calmer, reflective. "I've been thinking a lot," they say. "I realized what I lost." They tell you everything you've always wanted to hear. Every word you waited months, maybe years, to believe. And for a moment, you want to trust them. You want to think maybe this time it's real, that the pain meant something, that they've finally changed. But they haven't changed, they've just recalibrated. The same manipulation now wears a new tone, less fiery, more gentle. They don't bombard you this time, they dose you. Just enough warmth to melt your defenses, just enough nostalgia to make you forget the chaos. They'll mention old memories, songs, places, jokes only the two of you knew. They recreate the illusion of safety, not to love you again, but to test if the door is still open. And when you respond, when you text back, when you soften, when you hope, they feel powerful again. Because it's not your forgiveness they're after, it's your reaction. It's proof they still own a piece of your mind. They feed on that spark, that flicker of emotion, that brief moment where you still care. To them, that's victory. But once they've had their fill, the cycle turns cold again. The warmth vanishes, the messages fade, and the silence returns. Heavier than before, you're left once more in the wreckage, wondering how you could fall for it again, hating yourself for opening the door. But that's what the Hoover is meant to do. Not to reconcile, but to remind you of your weakness. It's not a reunion, it's a reenactment, a cruel encore of the same performance that once destroyed you. Yet this time, something inside you shifts. Because as the pain resurfaces, it carries a new clarity. You finally see the pattern for what it is, not love, not destiny, but addiction. You realize they never changed because they can't. Their love isn't deep enough to transform, only to manipulate. And once that truth settles, the spell breaks. The message that once shook your heart now reads like static. The voice that once had power now sounds hollow. That's when the Hoover fails, not because they stopped trying, but because you stopped responding. You stopped feeding the illusion. You stopped needing the apology that will never come. You finally understand that the silence they fear most is not the absence of contact, but the absence of control. And so, for the first time, you don't text back. You don't explain, you don't justify, you don't engage. You simply walk away. Not in anger, not in bitterness, but in peace. Because this time, your silence isn't submission, it's sovereignty. The Hoover doesn't end when they stop reaching out. It ends when you no longer look back. When you no longer need them to understand, to regret, or to change. Because you've changed. And that's what truly terrifies them. Stage 6. The awakening, breaking the cycle. At first, the silence feels unbearable. You stare at your phone, waiting for a message that never comes. The world feels too quiet, too heavy, too still. For so long, your entire being revolved around their chaos, their moods, their approval, their attention. Without them, you feel like you've lost the rhythm of your own heartbeat. But this emptiness, this void that once felt like death, it's not your ending, it's the beginning of your freedom. You start to see things differently. You realize that every word they said, every gesture, every tear was part of a script, not love, but control. They didn't choose you because they saw your light. They chose you because they could use it. You begin to understand that they never truly knew who you were. They were never in love with your soul, only the way it made them feel powerful. And slowly, painfully, you start reclaiming yourself. You begin by doing small things, things that once felt impossible. You sleep without checking your phone. You laugh without guilt. You breathe without fear. You realize that peace doesn't have to be earned through suffering. It's your natural state, something you had forgotten how to recognize. Every moment of calm feels strange at first, but it's sacred, it's healing. The memories still come, their face, their voice, their cruelty disguised as affection. Sometimes you still cry, not because you miss them, but because you finally see the truth. You see how deeply you were manipulated, how much of yourself you gave to someone who only loved the reflection of their own ego. But even through the grief, you feel something powerful rising inside you, a quiet strength, a sense of self returning from the ashes. No longer ask why they did what they did. You start asking why you tolerated it. And that's the real awakening, when you turn the mirror inward, not to blame yourself, but to understand the wound that made you stay. You see that what you called love was really your attempt to heal something broken long before they came. The narcissist didn't create your pain, they revealed it. And once you see that, you are no longer trapped. Healing isn't loud, it's not fireworks or declarations. It's the slow, sacred process of remembering who you were before the conditioning, before the fear, before the manipulation. You start to rebuild, not the old version of you that survived them, but the new one who thrives without them. You learn that forgiveness isn't about excusing what they did, It's about freeing yourself from the need for them to ever make it right. There comes a day, ordinary, quiet, unexpected, when you wake up and realize you haven't thought about them in weeks. The tightness in your chest is gone. The silence that once felt unbearable now feels peaceful. You walk outside and the world feels alive again. Sunlight, air, music, laughter. And in that moment you understand. They never destroyed you. They just redirected you back to yourself. The awakening doesn't happen all at once. It unfolds in layers: grief, clarity, release, peace. But it always leads to the same truth. You were never broken. You were being rebuilt. What they called weakness was your capacity for love. What they mocked as sensitivity was your gift of empathy. What they tried to crush was your power. You no longer walk on eggshells. You walk on solid ground, your own. And this time, you don't need anyone to choose you, because you've finally chosen yourself.